Welcome to Researcher's Desk for this special session in advance of COP27. Now, what I'm going to do before we start, before I introduce our delegates, I'm going to go through all of the acronyms, and there are quite a few, so that we're all speaking the same language. The acronyms you need to know when we're talking about the COP meetings are the following ones: IPCC, UNFCCC, and COP. And these acronyms are thrown around all the time, and most of us, or some of us, understand some bits about each of them. IPCC stands for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and this is a United Nations body which is tasked with assessing the science related to climate change. So this is where scientists communicate with the rest of the world, primarily to decision makers, and it's through this intergovernmental panel. It's an amazing organization because it's allowed the voice of science to be heard beyond the towers of academia and in the real world. One hears a lot of criticism about the IPCC, but I think one should never forget what an absolutely amazing pedagogic entity it actually is. And the IPCC produce regular reports, and those reports provide us with the scientific basis for making science-based decisions about our future. The most recent reports, which will underpin the science of COP27, is the 6th annual report of the IPCC, and in that report, they look at the physical basis for climate change. They look at adaptation, that's how we deal with the consequences of climate change, and super importantly, mitigation, how we stop it happening in the first place. The UNFCCC stands for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This is the United Nations entity which is tasked with supporting the global response to the threat of climate change. That is, this is the entity which is tasked with following the guidance of the IPCC. The UNFCCC has nearly universal membership. What that means is there are 198 parties, and parties usually means countries. So almost all of the countries of the world are part of the UNFCCC. COP, the third acronym, it stands for Conference of the Parties. This is the supreme decision-making body of the UNFCCC. All states that are parties to the UNFCCC are represented at the COP. The COP that's about to happen in Egypt is COP27. It's the 27th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. The first one was in Bonn. And the COPs occur alternate between the 5 UNFCCC regions. Last year it was Western Europe, and it was Glasgow. The most important thing that has ever come out of the COP is the Paris Agreement. This is a legally binding international treaty on climate change adopted by 196 parties at COP21, which was held in Paris in December 2015. The agreement entered into force in 2016, and it's the most important agreement that exists today. Its goal is to holding the increase in global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. That Paris Agreement is hugely important, and it underpins the COP meetings. And last year's COP, one of the success stories was that particular key goal was reaffirmed. So we're still fighting for 1.5 degrees, which is something to feel positive about. With that said, Researcher's Desk is one of the organizations that has the right to send a delegation to the COP. This is thanks to the work of Toya over a year ago, trying to achieve what it's called UNFCCC status. This means that our delegates can meet the decision makers. They can be in the same room and they can influence. The COP itself is divided into different zones. There's a green zone, which is open to everyone, and a blue zone, which is only open to negotiators and to observers. And our team are observers of the COP. They are allowed to speak. They are allowed to influence. And at the COP, what one finds is that one of the main ways of influencing is at places called pavilions. These are called pavilions, which are organized by a numerous bunch of organizations. There are side events, and those side events are there for negotiators as they're walking back and forth. And at those side events, people from all different organizations speak out. The COP is also influenced from the outside. Outside the gates, masses of activists from all over the world gather, and they make a difference. The feeling at COP26 was so much like that. The groups from Extinction Rebellion dancing the Scottish Cayley in the streets of Glasgow will have influenced how people thought, because they sent warmth and passion into the arena. So everyone counts, everyone matters at a COP. And this year, for the first time, we will send our delegation, and our delegation are Stig-Olof from Umeå University, Erik Huss, formerly from Stockholm University at Sustainability, and Alab Irosso. I apologize, Alab, if I pronounce your name incorrectly. And Alab is from the most effective people and areas, MAPA, which you can think about roughly as Fridays for Future of the Global South. Alab will be representing, of course, her people, the MAPA people from the Philippines, but we're super proud that she's also going to represent Researchers Desk. And Alab, I'd like to hand over to you first to share with us your thoughts, your hopes and dreams for COP27 in Egypt. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alab. I'm from the Philippines, and going to COP this year is my first time. It's like my first time ever going abroad even. But I'm really hoping to share stories and to get the climate impact awareness, like bring that up into what are the impacts here in the Philippines and the impacts in the global south. And even also talk about the issues on adaptation and how it's looking in the Philippines, and also the conversations on loss and damages around that. We want to give focus to that, especially since we want the things that we want to demand is the reparations for those who are most affected. So hoping that in this COP, we get to speak in those pavilions, get into those spaces, meet the other global south people and get conversations going as well. Hopefully we also come together and build connections, and we can move forward into like a stronger, united body, like as a global south and the people who are most affected. So I think that's pretty much it for me. Like, I really hope it's a lot of meeting up with people. It's a lot of talking in spaces, and as well as making connections even with those who has been in the movement for the longest time, or those who are new. It's great to have that kind of conversation. That's it.
Alab, that's fantastic, and we are so pleased that you are going. We know your work is vastly important out at the COP. You used a COP phrase, which I'd like you to explain for the audience what it means. You referred to losses and damages. Now, that's a very COP lingo. So would you be kind enough to explain what that means? And remember to put your mic on.
Sure. So loss and damages refer to the damages, the impacts of climate change to communities, but it's not just the environmental impacts that we are, we already know, like the temperature rising, sea level rising, but it's also the impacts on communities, which is, it can be physical and also something that you can't put a price on. So it's like culture, it's housing, it's the things that are lost, which is that will be lost in displacement and the like. So it's those kinds of things that we ask for reparations. Which is like basically the payback from those who are contributing the most, who are contributing the most emissions, and it's the demands of those who are affected to get accountability, to get justice, essentially, to what's happening to them. And especially here, like we just experienced a typhoon. So many lives were lost, and that's because of the lack of adaptation. That's the lack of preparation, as well as the worsening typhoons, essentially, which is caused by climate change. So, yeah.
Thank you, Alab. That was really pedagogic and very helpful for all of us to really understand what's going on there, what we're all doing. Sometimes these COP phrases can become lingo, and we lose the feeling about them, what they mean. Alab, I'm hoping you're going to hang around with us. Erik's going to talk about his aspirations, and then I'd love the audience to be able to ask you questions. So stay with us, and I'm going to ask Erik. You're very kindly agreed to represent Researcher's Desk together with Stig-Olof and Alab at COP27. Would you be so kind as to share your thoughts, hopes, and aspirations? Tell us about what you're going to do out there. The floor is yours, Erik.
Oh, thanks a lot. It's like Alab says, it's first time for me going to a COP meeting, and I'm really proud to represent Researcher's Desk, which is skilled researchers from all kind of disciplines about Earth system science and climate and biology, and also behavior science, and also Berlin Center for Climate Research, which is my former employee. So it feels like coming back into science again, which is really good. I think we start celebrating the main sponsor for this, and it's really bad. This is actually the main sponsor for the COP, the biggest plastic polluter on this planet, also influencing, you know, ecosystems, climate, and everything. They are sponsoring this climate meeting. So I bought this just in pedagogic reasons. Isn't that ironic? So I will talk about actually 3 things today. First is the urgency. And as with the background, I have a background as a glaciologist, geographer. I've been dealing with climate science and earth system science for decades. Now I work to help companies and politicians to consider the planetary boundaries and not just the shareholders and the voters. So we are, if you take all the promises that the countries have said, then we will still, you know, rise the temperature with 2.5 degrees by the end of the century. But, you know, promises are words, as Greta says. If you look at the politics of today and the business of today, we will reach 2.8, 2.9 degrees, maybe 3 degrees at the end of the century. And a 3-degree world, what does that mean? That is almost going back to the Ice Age. It was 4 degrees colder 20,000 years ago, but on the other way. So we're doing an inverted Ice Age. And a world of 3 degrees can inhabit a safe operating space for humanity for maximum 1 billion people, between 0.5 and 1 billion people with it safely. We are reaching towards 9 and 10 billion people. So we will be 90% too many on this planet if we look at today's policy. 90% too many. It's hard to grasp. And that's within a couple of generations. Also, if we look at Sweden has been in the forefront of climate policy for 100 years. But now we have a government that is taking away part after part that has been, you know, really a profit for the planet and the climate. And they interviewed the new climate environment minister that we will increase our emissions with 25 million tons the coming 4 years if we follow their policy. But she's not worried. So we others have to worry about this and really make a change. That was the urgency. We have to understand this, and this is really, really bad. And the urgency, it hits the most affected countries most, as Alab said. It's not the rich ones. So it's a climate, decency that we have to deal with. Number 2 is actually solutions. And right now, last week, the European ministers, European Union ministers, they decided to increase the ambitions of climate policy and also biodiversity. So it looks like Europe and also the Biden administration with the new IRA Act, Inflation Reduction Act, can show the way that you can make political decisions and show that the business, if you deal with the green transition in business, it will be profitable for you. So Europe and United States might show the way, hopefully. And also the terrible war in Ukraine has shown that the dependency on fossil fuels from Russia is not a good business or good policy. So actually, the speed of change from fossil fuels to renewables is actually accelerating extremely fast in Europe and in Sweden. So actually, like Churchill said, never waste the perfect crisis. So a crisis can be good. Sounds crazy, but can be good. And then we move over to my third point. We have the urgency, sense of urgency, the insights. We know the solutions, but is that enough? No, you have to show action, climate action. And what I hope to be able to do in COP when I go there, first, I will emit like 1.8 ton, almost 2 tons of carbon dioxide just by going there and back. That's 2 years of my carbon budget. And normally I don't fly, so this is extreme change in my own. I will double my own carbon budget just by going to Sharm el Sheikh. But I hope to influence, because I will join this inauguration process to meet the leaders in the blue zone, to affect people so much that my presence will lower carbon emissions by at least 20 million tons. So I will have an exchange rate of 1 to 10 million tons. Sounds okay? That's the crazy ambition I have, at least. So I will do this by the 9th of November. I will talk about the Jubilee expedition that I conducted this spring. I was going on with a group of scientists and adventurers and filmers in Svalbard, and to collect information about what's happening in the Arctic and the Svalbard. And I will show also images that have never been seen before. And I will do this in the ICCI pavilion. And that abbreviation stands for International Cryosphere Climate Initiative. And cryosphere is everything frozen on Earth. So we glaciologists, we love frozen things. So, and that will be about this Jubilee expedition, that 150 years after Adolf Fredrik Nordenskiöld did his expedition to Svalbard. The 11th of November, I will talk about ecocide. And I've joined that initiative since it started, but I've been a bit passive. But now I will present the progress in the ecocide. So ecocide is about the Rome statutes and to make, you know, we have rules and laws for genocide and homicide. And genocide is forbidden by law, but it's still okay to ruin nature and ecosystems, like cutting wood, cutting down forests, or ruining the climate. But there are lawyers all around the world trying to make this change and to make it illegal for huge devastation of nature. And that is called End Ecocide. And I will present that in the We Don't Have Time pavilion it's called the Dino Talks on the 11th of November. And last time I had a talk with We Don't Have Time, we had 9 million viewers. So there's the impact. They are the biggest social climate network in the world, and hopefully people will listen to this Ecocide talk. The day after, I will also talk about the solution thing. We made 2 years ago, me and a climber adventurer called Oskar Kihlborg, we thought that he asked me, can you save a glacier? And he said, I said, well, yeah, what do you think about it? Well, there are so many glaciers melting. Can you save a glacier? He said, yeah, well, people have tried, but they take this polyester or fossil-based sheets and fly them up with helicopters. So it's pretty counterproductive. So we thought that, can we do this in a good way? So we have did everything for no emissions to cover up Swedish glaciers. And we made a film of that, a professional filmmaker. We are just on our way to translate the whole film into English. And that will be presented on the 12th of November. It's called CPR on a Swedish glacier. So that was it, and I hope to meet a lot of people to talk with politicians, business leaders, and people from all around the world to hear stories and to be able to understand more and affect more. So if I go there and emit 2 tons, let's make it efficient 2 tons. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Erik, and of course, Alab, that you are going to COP27. And I'm really, really excited to hear about the high-profile schedule of events that you're going to be participating in, Erik, and the really important messages you're going to be conveying. This is, I cannot underline how important that this is, that science finds its way into the arena. That's absolutely brilliant work, and I'm 100% certain that this will be 2 tons of carbon well invested, in that the emissions reductions will be far larger. It scares me a lot when the people who know about climate don't go to these meetings because of looking after the climate, because that means the people making the decisions are the people who neither know about the climate and in worst cases don't even care. So I think you're doing the right thing to go there. And I think you too, Alab, are doing a brilliant thing to go there. Young voices of all must be heard. This is, I'm aware what's going on in the Philippines as a geologist. I'm fully aware just how dangerous it actually is. And you have every right and all of our support for fighting for our future, our entire planet's future. That's great that you're going. We're also sending Stig-Olof home. He wasn't able. He wasn't able to join us this lunchtime session. He'll be talking at the Nordic Council of Ministers Pavilion, whereas Erik's talking at the ICCI, the Cryosphere Pavilion. They'll be in the same building. They'll be in the blue zone. The Nordic Council of Ministers will give Stig-Olof the opportunity to talk about Swedish forestry and how the entire Swedish forestry industry needs transformed to a completely different way forward that does not leave a time gap between the cutting down of trees, at which point they stop photosynthesizing and stop taking carbon out of the atmosphere, and the time it takes for those forests to grow again. He's also going to be raising issues about the loss of natural forests, which are both vital for biodiversity and also sometimes forgotten. They're also vital as for taking carbon out of the atmosphere. They're much better at it than these plantations that they're replaced with. And because the problem with plantations is that it's very dark underneath them, and the storage of carbon, although you would think about it being mostly in the trees, it's also underground. And if there's nothing growing in the ground, it can't be storing carbon. So these more light and often more beautiful natural forests are so important. So that's what Stig-Olof will be talking about. Not representing Researchers' Desk, but one of our members also attending is Wim Carlson. And Wim, it would be lovely if you would share with us briefly what you'll be doing at the COP. Before you speak, I'm still recording. Is that okay?
That's totally fine.
Okay. Wim, thank you. Would you understand that you're attending COP27? Would you be kind and share with us what you will be doing at the meeting?
Sure.
And then I'll open it for questions.
I'll just move myself because I was right in the sun here. Yeah, so I'm going on the official delegation from Lund University. And essentially, I'm doing two things there. One is that we are launching a big report that we've written together with colleagues in Australia, Denmark, Germany, and Austria, which is called the Land Gap Report. Actually, the executive summary was released yesterday, and the full report is released tomorrow. And I see that the website is down, but you can find some more information on Twitter here for the time being. But basically what we did is that we looked at all countries' climate pledges and calculated how much land they are relying on for land-based carbon removal. And we calculate that they rely collectively on 1.2 billion hectares of land, which is about the total area that we currently use for all cropland in the world. And so we conclude that countries are making an unrealistic claim on land to compensate for continued emissions. And we will be organizing a side event at COP. So that's on the 11th of November, where I'll be speaking together with colleagues. And then the second part of where I'm going is essentially I'm part of a research project that is trying to understand the way that the negotiations are taking form on Article 6 and the role of removals within that. So we're there to analyze both corporate and country commitments in terms of carbon removal. So it's part of a research project as well. And unlike Erik, I haven't calculated the exchange rate between my carbon footprint and what impact it will generate, but I'm of course hoping that it'll be positive. Yeah. But I'm looking forward, and I'd be keen to meet any of the official delegates from Researchers' Desk there as well.
Wim, we're delighted that you're going, and this is really important work you're doing. You did, however, use a bit of COP lingo. You said Article 6. Would you be so kind as to explain for the audience what that actually means?
That's very true. Article 6 is essentially one of the articles under the Paris Agreement that is trying to establish international cooperation on meeting the climate targets. And so the main part of Article 6, at least from my point of view, is the establishment of a new carbon market. So under the Kyoto Protocol, we had a carbon market mechanism called the Clean Development Mechanism. And now under Paris, there's a discussion of establishing a follow-up. And there's a lot of problems with this. Carbon offsetting, of course, has lots of challenges and is often used as a greenwashing tool. So that's why it's, I think, crucial that people are there to actually, follow this process and hold countries to account. So that's essentially why we're researching this.
Thank you, Wim, for that clarification. That was very helpful. And thank you very much indeed. Alab, you popped a message in the chat. Why don't, just before I close the recording, why don't you put your camera on and speak that out for everyone? Preferably with your microphone on.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention. It was just lost track of it, but I will be speaking in the Malaysia Pavilion and the NDCP Pavilion on separate days. But on the Malaysia Pavilion, I'll be there as a youth representative, and on the NDCP Pavilion, I'll be there speaking on gender justice or gender and climate finance as a representative again of the youth or as civil society. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. I forgot to mention it earlier. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's super good, Al. Thanks for sharing that with us all. I'm going to now thank all of our delegates going out and Wim representing Lund University. And I'm going to stop the recording.